What's up, guys? It's Michael here. In this video, I want to talk about economic changes and especially taxes versus, for example, this one video was made by Economic Visual Politic. And if you look at it, it's pretty interesting how they mention Denmark and versus Spain. But I find it that their comparison, and they're specifically targeting taxes, is not really the whole picture. Because when you speak to a tax advisor, they look at many other factors. For example, your demographics, your population, what type of lifestyle you're living, what type of businesses you're running, how are you spending your money, where do you spend your money, and how well you keep records and bookkeepings. So in this case, we're going to specifically look at this one video that said why Denmark is such a rich country, even to have one of the highest taxes in the EU. Now, I think the best comparison, instead of using their country such as Spain, which has a higher population than Denmark, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on that, but in this case, we're going to use it against the United States, especially in New York and California, because taxes vary between country and country, and in the United States, it varies between states. There's a lot of other factors in there that can range from what type of tax laws they write, what type of people, which is really important, and the population and the culture, and what type of businesses and what type of economic environment they provide. So their video states that Denmark is, why is the country so rich? It does so much better, it does everything right, and you have really high taxes. But what I don't get is they really skip the part is their culture. Okay, Denmark, their population is definitely a lot less than other really major and big countries. They said their government does a lot better job, even if we have really higher taxes. And they did mention one fair point. Taxes are not all the same. I agree with you. For example, look at California. If you look at my previous video, California has really high taxes. And high enough taxes to match Denmark. But at the same time is, where does all the money go? Where does all the liability go? Do they have proof or records to show for it? Because you can pay your taxes, and at the same time is, most of the time, they don't give you an actual record, which all of us have to do it by giving out a tax return. And why can't we give a tax return or like an audit to the IRS or whatever tax authority? We can't do that, unfortunately. So the only way we use it to measure is, for example, do they provide goods and services? For example, healthcare, fixing the roads, fixing sidewalks, fixing streets, plumbing, electricity, the grid, anything, financial services, education, the list goes on. And it's really unfair to pit Denmark against Spain. Well, I guess. I mean, there's a lot of things like culture don't really mix. For example, that country doesn't have as much pro-business compared to Denmark. And if you pit it against the United States has a bigger budget. They have a lot more things to take care of compared to Denmark, which is what? The military is there, but it's not as big. It doesn't have the role which they have to take care of, or policing majority of the world, in this case almost the whole entire world. And there's a lot of other factors. But if you look at taxes relating to that, even if you try to cancel those out and negate it, you still have to relate all those factors, because this influence how does tax dollars be spent. So if you didn't have a military to take care of, for example, the United States has the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. If they have to take care of that, then yeah, we have a lot more money we could allocate elsewhere. But we have to utilize all the money into military, because we have to keep the water safe, and we have the Federal Reserve and a national currency and the US dollar dominance, and thanks in part of that. But if you look at our taxes vary pretty much in every state. Some states have lower taxes than others to drive incentives to come to other people. When you say Denmark has the highest taxes, you gotta look at what type of taxes were they at. For example, income tax is a major factor and hurts a lot of people, basically everyone. So for businesses and corporations that people make a lot of money, how you negate that? By running a business. If you run a business are not considered people. And I actually see some other YouTubers saying that business should be categorized as people. And I can argue that if they're going to categorize as people, why the heck do we have to basically follow that rule or live in that type of situation? We are free to choose, as every single person. And if that's the case, if it's that bad, we'll just leave. Simple. Go to another country, go to another state, then you lose that business. there's a reason why there is competition in the first place. If there's no competition, you gotta have someone abusing the crap out of it. And it's always gotta happen every single time. And you can answer that, why is the Nordic countries really happy, even despite paying really high taxes? And I can argue back is your culture. United States, we're mixed with every single person. We just don't have one ethnicity or in one culture, basically, where everyone decides like, oh, whatever we do, everyone likes it. Over here, what I do doesn't mean the person next door or my neighbor would like to do. Like, if I was a YouTuber and I like to talk and speak my mind out a lot, my neighbor might not like to do that. And we're both Asian, but hey, that's what our differences are. We have a lot of various and differences. And that will affect in taxes. Now, how does it relate? So, for example, in Denmark, gotta give credit to them, is their government, a lot of people trust them. At the same time, you can argue because of their culture, because everyone shares similar values. They're all, majority of them is Danish. It's not like the United States, we're all mixed. And you can argue that they have the services provided. For example, their education. You can call it free education, but as I mentioned in previous videos, nothing is free. Basically, tax dollars pay for it. Healthcare, EU, in general, EU, majority of it is free. All the basic necessity and care is free. Free by being paid through tax dollars. When you have to pay more taxes, that's what you get. But at the same time there's something you guys don't get. You guys don't get your military as powerful as the United States because we dump so much money into development here. What do we have? Healthcare here really blows. Meaning not blows in how quality the drugs, it just blows financially. So most of the things that other countries like Canada and EU get for free, we have to pay for it. But at the same time, where does all our money go to? It goes to majority in the military. Education. Education's another one. Education in Denmark, one of the top places. Has one of the best educations in the world compared to like Japan, South Korea, and EU. But you can argue that, yeah, you guys have really great education, better than here, but we can argue that we have more freedom to choose here. So there's a lot of things that account for how do taxes work and whether or not there's accountability for them. Now, there's another question. They said this one is pretty subjective. They said there are more rich people or wealthy people or people with less social or income gaps. This one is pretty interesting because I find it almost really hard to measure because if you look at Denmark, if you cut out culture aside and ethnicity aside, then yeah, most of them people have really close income gaps, meaning the rich and they're super rich and super poor. That gap is a lot more narrower compared to United States. And if you didn't cut out culture and ethnicity part, United States, there is a major difference. For example, certain cultures like to work harder than others. For example, Asian countries, majority of people want to work hard because they know to get a better life. And this does not apply to everyone, but if you look at statistics itself, it is what it is. And if you put it for other countries that don't have like a mixed ethnicity or that much people that varies in different degrees, then I have to say America's basically better and has a better ratio dilution of every type of mixed ethnicity. And how does it relate to taxation? Because this dictates how taxation dollars is spent. What do people want? So United States, we have the military to spend on. Then we have the education to spend on. Then we have all the other factors, businesses to spend on. But at the end, if you look at all the taxes being spent on, how does it being spent? Because like I mentioned earlier in the video, all taxes are not created equal. Best example of this, previous video I made, California is now raising taxes, now putting mandatory taxes. Technically, at this point, they don't call it taxes. They call it fixed fee, but at this point, I call it taxes on electricity for something you didn't even spend on. They try to push that on. Now, if you look at Denmark, they didn't do that. They put something like a VAT tax, a VAT. In this case, and if you look at that, it's more of a sales tax. Sales tax in the United States actually varies. They vary so much that it's impossible for me to list it because in California, it's based on city. So cities will have different types of sales tax. And there are other countries, this doesn't even include, it's so complicated that I cannot answer this directly on video because it depends on your situation, depends on where you live. For example, Japan, you don't have to pay tips. You're not supposed to pay tips. But in America, everyone pays tips. And the tips will vary from ranges like 15% to 20%. And it really is up to how much you want to pay. Some people might not pay any, which is considered rude over here. But Japan, paying tips is considered rude. So it is based on culture too. Now they're saying that Denmark, why is that country so rich? And all at the end it breaks down, besides taxes, it depends on what the government spends it on. And how clear do they spend it on? So if they don't have to spend on, for example, military, definitely cheaper. And if you spend all that money and put it into your own economic growth, then that's another thing too. That if you have that budget to spend it on yourself to make your country grow, then hey, great for you guys, because you guys get the benefit without spending much money into defense compared to America, which spends like what majority, like 50% of it at minimum, into defense. If not, it's still a major amount. Now, to look at taxes more objectively, it really depends on your situation. So, for example, California has a corporate tax between 7 to 8%. Now, if you're going to tax corporations, there's one thing that a lot of people don't mention. To open a business, you have to get something like a permit, and you have to open a license, what type of business you open. And I'm pretty sure if they're going to say that Denmark is a lot more friendlier in businesses than, like, let's say, like California, I do agree with them, because even you have, let's say that Denmark has higher corporate income tax, but it might be easier to get a permit. So the best example of this, look at those tax haven countries: Ireland, Luxembourg, and from other articles, they said Estonia, Latvia, and you look at like Monaco. Those places are tax havens. And at the same time there's one other thing besides it's a tax haven. They make it really nice for businesses to operate there. So basically, let's say I want to open a concrete factory. So if you open a concrete factory, there's a couple things I consider. Pollution. You gotta find workers. Basically, if you don't have skilled workers, then forget it. You're not opening that factory there because you have no one to work there. And AI and basically automation can only cover so much for this current point in time. All the basic tools and necessities. So Ireland would be a perfect example. Intel, you have Microsoft, you have other companies going into there. That's how Ireland did so well. Besides being business friendly, there are a lot of investments in. They have really nice tax laws, fair enough that you get people to move out the States and into the EU, and that specifically that country. Now, Monaco, I heard that they don't have income tax at all. And to the point is, they're such a tax haven that they're almost like 0% on all categories of taxes. And the trade-off is everyone wants to go there, meaning how they make their money, people spending money as a tourist. Because think about it, every single item you buy, every single item you receive for so-called for free, like education, is paid by someone. Nothing is free. If you understand the fact that nothing is free, so anything you guys receive or do, or you watch other videos from other YouTubers saying this is the end of the world, or the US dollar is going to get dethroned, or let's say the housing market is going to crash, there's always someone behind there making money off of it, because that's how the cycle of financial system works. You can call it a really sick game, because technically this is how the financial system works. We trade our time, and our time is being traded in to earn money, and money comes in is traded to buy something of value. That's how the financial game system works. In this case, taxes play a major role in how much you can get and what things you can do in the future to make even more money. So this video has gone for long enough. I hope you guys enjoy. Please like, share, subscribe. And I feel like I missed a lot of things because this topic, it's really hard to look into how Denmark did so well. And if you especially target taxes, there's a lot of things that those other YouTubers I mentioned, especially the one I mentioned earlier in the video, is there's so many factors into it to make a country successful versus, like, let's say the United States, because there's a lot of things that they cover and that we don't have to cover. And another thing is population. What does the mindset of everyone there have? It's just basically too much in one video. If this video had to list everything, you're probably spending easily over one day listing every nook and cranny. And this is basically the generalization of it and things that other people don't mention. I thought to bring it up. So I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to click the subscribe button down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.